Out Against Mental Illness.
Hello everyone, just a quick note before I get into this episode proper. I recorded the first half of this episode before I recorded the second half, which involves me wandering around the countryside and talking to myself, which is a fairly normal thing for me to do. And I was recording it at a time when a week or so ago Scotland was being pretty heavily blown around by some strong winds, and made several attempts to record these outdoor segments, and only really was able to derive a certain amount of usable stuff from each, and some of it is still pretty noisy. You'll hear the wind blowing things around. I don't have the sort of mic that can cope with being buffeted heavily by wind, although maybe after this experience I'll invest in one. But I've done my best to pull the best bits out that are actually listenable, but there's still quite a lot of noise on there. So I just wanted to apologise in advance for that. But you get very much the raw audio experience of Scotland, and maybe it will make you feel a bit more like you're there. The other thing I wanted to mention was I have another podcast. I know that very few people listening to this will be in the same tech and data arena that I am for my day job, because I'm not just a world famous podcasting celebrity. I also have to earn money, and so I do fun things with data and AI. Me and my long-time collaborator Pete have a podcast. It's called The Confusion Matrix, and it can be found wherever you get your podcasts. So if you do happen to be listening to this and are also interested in things like data science, AI, generative AI, language models, analysis, statistics, that type of thing, then go give that a listen. Tell all your technically minded friends to do the same. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'll be back in just a second with more of me. See ya.
Out Against Mental Illness.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. This is the long-awaited second part of my Momentum series. Now, originally I envisaged this as being 2 episodes. The first one, which was released, a month ago, was really about me procrastinating and digressing and working on things that were not the things that I was supposed to be working on. I talked a little bit about my life circumstances and how I've got a lot less time, and the frequency of these podcasts was likely to suffer a bit from that. And I explain it, and I hope you all understand. Don't care if you don't. This is my life, my podcast. But the second part was supposed to be, and still is going to be, a lot more practical and a lot less me navel gazing. And I thought about it. I'm not so sure I can get the rest of what I want to talk about done in one episode. In fact, it's conceivable that there are 4 more on this. Although I don't think they're going to be long ones. I have a list of 4 steps that I think are important if you want to regain momentum, if you need to get restarted again after a bit of a hiatus or a fug or some time out, be it a holiday or some illness or whatever it is that stopped you from being creative. I want to help you get started again. My list is relatively simple, but as a process, summing it up in a sort of single episode, I just didn't think I could do it, so I'm not going to try. I'm actually going to try a slightly different approach here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this process in real time. No, I'm not going to go through it real time because, quite frankly, you're going to be listening to this sometime after I recorded it, and also I'm going to record it in bits. But what I guess I mean by that, I'm going to try and give you a window into my world, talking about and relaying the experiences of going through this process, because I, as far as this podcast goes, at least haven't regain my momentum, as should be clear with the frequency of episodes. So I'm going to take you through this, and it's going to take as long as it takes. Okay? I'm going to go through this one at a time, and I'm going to explain a little bit about what I mean by that, and then I'm going to go into some aspect of it, here on the microphone, and try and give you some real world perspective and experience of what I mean by it. All of these are very in the mind, so I can talk about it to an extent, and I think you'll be able to follow along. And if you can't, well, should be an interesting ride. I'm just going to plough in because this is going to be partly me monologuing for a little bit, and then partly me doing something else. So, what do I mean by momentum? Well, for those among you who are not physicists, you probably think of momentum as a car rolling down a hill, or a ball rolling down a hill, snowball, or a landslide, something like that. And you would be right. What you're experiencing there is an object being propelled downhill in the direction of gravity under no other power than its own weight. And in the most simplistic terms, that's momentum. If you put a ball at the top of a hill or any type of slope, and you just let go of it on the ground, it will start off quite slow, depending on the inclination of the hill and the surface that it's on. But we'll probably start off quite slow and then slowly build up more and more speed. And it's that process that's called momentum. And I think, if you had an infinitely long hill, you can keep gaining momentum and going faster and faster and faster and covering more and more ground without any extra power. But we don't live in a universe where that's even possible. So there are almost certainly some dips in the road, and you might have to go up a hill to come back down one, and or there are flat bits. If anyone's ever been skiing, that especially if you're a snowboarder, the flat bits of the slopes can be very, very frustrating, where you lose all your momentum or most of it, and end up having to pop your board off and walk for a while. And it's those periods where the momentum has stopped for some reason. And when you're careering down the hill, when the ball's rolling, when it's gaining speed, it feels like you're never going to stop. It feels like effortless and exhilarating, and that there's nothing else in the world until you hit a brick wall, you hit a flat bit on the ski slope, you find a hill, or life basically gets in the way, and getting restarted again can be exhausting, and you have to start from the beginning. You have to start slowly, because that's how momentum works. You can't just suddenly burst out at 50, 70, 80 miles an hour. Even downhill skiers, the ones that do the real super G slaloms and stuff, these guys will start off probably, at the starting blocks. The acceleration's relatively slow, and they have to put a lot of energy into getting themselves moving, despite the fact that they're at top of a big snowy slope with very, very smooth skis, and will eventually, under nothing but their own weight and the incline of the hill, achieve speeds up to 70, 80 miles an hour, which is mind-blowing, right? But they have to start. They have to start at the top. They have to have got up there, and then they have to push themselves off and really try and gain that speed. And it's hard. You've got what's called inertia, which is the natural tendency of a body with weight to want to stand still unless it's given some type of nudge, i.e. gravity, or propelled by something. And overcoming inertia and getting moving for any body of any weight is quite difficult. It takes a lot of energy to get moving, but once you are, and providing there's nothing slowing you down or blocking your way, once you've got moving, it's a lot easier, and there's a lot less, in fact possibly no energy at all involved in maintaining that. It's the getting started that's the killer. And so I'm going to talk about getting started. And I think we can build up a lot of residual guilt and inertia and general sort of procrastination and laziness that prevents us from getting started on whatever it is we feel like we need to do. And so that act of putting a pen to paper, that act of getting your canvas ready or tuning up your instrument, it can feel like the most daunting thing in the world, the most scary thing, because you know that first step isn't really the point. It's everything that has to come after that. And I think this weight that you carry and this tension that you have in terms of feeling the need to start again and feeling like you can't or you don't want to, or it all seems too difficult or too much, it is the killer. I mean, it's the thing that really stops you from moving, which is why my advice is to don't do it, right? Actually, the best way to get started on something new is just to go and clear yourself, clear your head, clear the way, as it were. So go and piece your slope, or prepare the ground a bit. And the way that I do that, and there's quite a few different ways of doing it, but the way that I do that is to go out walking. And it could be running. It could be going to the gym that helps you do this, or meditation, but it's something that has to take you out of your comfort zone, take you out of the familiar places where you can always find something else to do, and to give you new input, new stimulus. And I'm not going to talk too much about this because the next section of this, I'm going to repeat this again to a degree, but it's worth me quickly summarising why you're going to hear what you're going to hear next. Otherwise, it probably won't make a lot of sense. So I like to go for a walk. I live in the Scottish countryside. It's absolutely stunning here. I can walk out my door in any direction and find something beautiful. And this time of the year is absolutely insane in terms of nature and the views and stuff. And I find it incredibly therapeutic in its own right, just getting out and walking around. And the physical aspect, I think, although not essential for this part of the process, I think it's such a big force multiplier that you'd be mad to do anything else than do something that's got a physical aspect to it. I know that's harder for some people than others, and I certainly wouldn't say it was essential. I do think that the act of getting your blood pumping, getting the endorphins going, it relaxes you, you release serotonin, you release dopamine. You don't have to have strenuous exercise, but just a leisurely stroll. I tend to power walk everywhere, but that's just me. So this is not an exercise podcast, a fitness podcast. I'm not here to tell you to get fit. I'm just here to give you some tips on being creative. And the physical side of this shouldn't be ignored, but I recognise it's not for everyone. So find something that you can do that will take you out, take you away from your studio, away from your computer, and away from all the things that are not normal to you, into a place where unusual things can happen, or a place that you find settling and inspiring, maybe, I guess. The point here is not to, oh no, I have to now drive, everyone has to now drive right up to north of the UK and hang out in Scotland because this is the place you have to do this. It can be anywhere. Go find your favourite place to go and walk around or hang out in your local city or town or whatever, right? It's what suits you, and you should make use of what you got, because the point here is it has to be easy. I'm not suggesting here that you go on a country retreat. That might be marvellous, but you're better off doing that when you have momentum, when you have impetus and enthusiasm, because you'll make better use of that. What I'm talking about here is just doing something that feels low calorie in terms of effort and time and so on, that you can just do, that's going to loosen you up a bit. And you might have to do it several times, and you might have to build it to a degree into your schedule. I'm going to talk about this as if you're going for a walk, because it's just easier. What you do is you go out and you find somewhere that you're going to walk that you know either go and get lost or somewhere that you know reasonably well, and you're not going to get disturbed by people a lot, that you're not going to get distracted and go shopping or something like that. Somewhere where you can walk that's largely free of significance in terms of things you might do. Just a place where you can be relaxed and open-minded. And I've got my local woods, which I absolutely love, and hardly ever see anyone in there. And I just let my brain wander. And if I find myself wondering, fretting about, I've got to go to the dentist next week, which I do, I hope this job interview goes well or whatever. These are the thoughts you need to push away. You need to sort of bring yourself back to your surroundings, look at what's around you, notice things, and generally be mindful. But let your brain wander. Just keep an eye on it to make sure it's not going into dark places or weird places or unhelpful places, and just try and relax and don't overthink it. Don't try and force yourself to think about the things you need to do. Don't try and structure things in your brain. Don't make a plan. Just let it brew in your brain. Just let it ferment and roll over, and bring your mind back to it every now and again. What have I got to do? I've got to do this. And you're in the sort of surroundings that are conducive to you being relaxed, and you're going to start to feel less and less worried or concerned. The activity that you've got to do is going to take on less of a significant and big and scary aspect, and you're going to start associating it with it being relaxed and it feeling a lot sort of easier. And if what you're lacking is inspiration, then just look at what's around you. Just try and find some stuff. If you're in a city, there's going to be no ends of things that are going to be stimulating and interesting. What I'm going to do now is to play you a recording of me wandering around the Scottish countryside, and sort of talking through my thinking and my thoughts, and a little bit of a tour of my local town, Auchterarder. I'm gonna call out some sights and sounds and stuff, but it's not really about here, this place, this time. It's about how I think and let my mind wander, and trying to give you a view into that. You can't really get a view into my brain. If I'm talking about stuff and I'm thinking about it in these terms, I'm not really letting my brain wander in the way that I'm suggesting here, but it's a close enough analogue that you'll get my point. You might find it boring, you might find it interesting and entertaining, you might find it soothing, you might find it angering. There's probably all sorts of weird noises going to come out. It was quite windy, so some of the recording might be a bit obscured. It was recorded on my headphone mic, which is not great, and I was out and about, so you'll hear stuff. I'll clean it up to make it as audible as possible, but outside of that, this will be largely as it happened and largely unedited. And I hope you enjoy it, and have a think about what I'm doing, and have a think about my thought processes, and how you might find a way to do this yourself. And then we can move on to the next step. And I'm not going to tell you what that step is, because I don't want you thinking about it. I don't want you dwelling on that. I specifically want you to just wallow in your ambience and your surroundings, and just let the things you are doing and the things you have to do wash over you, and just observe them. Then next episode, which could be in the next 3 days, or it could be in 3 weeks or longer, I don't know. I'll talk about the next set of stuff, which is going to feel a little bit more practical. But let's be clear, next episode we're not going to be doing. In fact, we're not going to be doing until the last episode of this series. The last episode of these 4 parts, because I'm also not ruling out doing a wash up at the end. So lie back, folks, relax, maybe go grab a cup of tea, glass of wine, sit in your favourite spot in your house, and revel in the bucolic and idyllic Scottish countryside with Alex Lovelace, your host today on Wanders Through the Countryside with Alex. See you next time, people. I'm looking at a field of, it's a meadow pasture, and just tall grasses with brown tips, and the wind is tickling the tops and creating this wave-like, looking at the surface of a lake or a calm sea. And house martins and swallows zoom around, dive bomb the top of the grasses and catch insects and flies. They're just so impressive to watch. They're so agile. Always makes me think of like X-wing fighters and TIE fighters in Star Wars. They're quite incredible. I can watch them for hours. They almost look like bats, but we're in the daytime. It's about 2 in the afternoon, and I'm above the train tracks, and I quite like it. This is the juxtaposition that I always like. Something so geometric. The train tracks extend away from me here, and I'm almost completely straight line across another bridge and vanish in a haze of trees in the distance. And it's just so utterly jarring to have this big brown metallic industrial stripe through dense, otherwise dense woodland, and you know, nothing's growing on it. And it's quite beautiful in its own way. And this, you know, this bridge that I'm stood on and the bridge that's going over there is some very old engineering, and all these trees would have been much smaller when this was built. It was part of a much bigger rail network than it is now, since the beaching cuts in the 1960s, where they closed down a lot of rural railways and cut off a bunch of rural towns and villages. But this is quite beautiful. There's evidence of the previous train system and network all around here. The tracks themselves are all long gone, but the remnants of old bridges and walkways and so on remains, overpasses, things like that, and it's quite fun. It's really kind of almost bizarre to sort of find them in the middle of what's otherwise woodland or farmland or something, where there's no roads, and there's this bit of a bridge that's just sort of sat there derelict, and you feel like you're transported almost back in time. And I really quite like finding them. They really fascinate me, give me so much pause for thought. And the idea that a giant steam train, not really that long ago, 70 or so years ago, 60, 70 years ago, would have traversed here and taken people from one place to the other. Since I prefer walking to running these days, you get more time to take a look at what's around you, and when you're running, you always feel like you're out here for the running. What's my time? You know, what's my pace? What's my heart rate? So you don't stop and look at something. You should immediately start to warm down and get cold, and it's just a distraction. I'm getting plenty of exercise, and I don't have to think about all this other crap. So I got rid of my fitness watch and stopped timing or measuring walks and runs, because it always just became about that rather than what I was actually doing, and you just miss stuff. the tractor just up here. Looks to me like it's baling hay in these gorgeous cylindrical hay bales. Oh, there's a little cute little beetle trying to get itself stepped on. Yeah, it's a baler. It's like it's like a forklift truck, and then the baler is like, it's like getting shrink wrapped. How cool is that? So they wrap the bale in black cellophane or whatever that is, and there's this giant thing with like a turntable with rollers that dishes out like bin liner material as the thing turns around and gets rolled, and it just keeps going round and round, wrapping up these giant cylinders of hay, keeping them dry until the winter. I mean, if you go for a walk in the countryside, there's so much cool engineering, and again it's the juxtaposition and come back to time and time again, and engineering is beautiful. It's just an extension of nature, and there's so much there, so much beauty and vibrancy, and when it's not destroying or polluting, which I'm sure that is a little bit, but it's performing a pretty vital duty. I mean, it's just quite incredible, and I love to see it. A bit noisy, so I wander around. Sometimes I'm in a world where I'm thinking about problems or conjuring up ideas. Sometimes I'm fretting or ruminating, though I try and stop myself from doing that. If I do that, I'll put like a podcast or an audio book on to distract my brain. Sometimes I just sort of let the thoughts wash over me, and let the sounds and sights and smells come in, conjure up whatever thoughts they want to conjure up. Another tractor. What's that one doing? Oh, that's the one doing the mowing. So you've got one doing the mowing, which has got the baler on the back of it, just mowing it up and changing it into these cylindrical hay bales, which are just dotted now across this field here. It's got a big sort of dip in it. I always love it this time of the year. It's that geometry in an undulating, constantly changing landscape that is almost entirely free of geometry, and there's these cylinders. I mean, they're not perfect cylinders, but they might as well be. I've got a couple of paintings and stuff of this, so I find it so fascinating. It's such a wonderful and modern feature of the countryside. And so this one's baling it up. They've got another one that's grabbing 4 at a time. This one's huge, it must weigh a ton, maybe literally, and taking it around to the dude with the forklift who's sticking them on the shrink wrap machine. It's all rather quite marvellous. And so how do you reconcile that, the geometry, the engineering, the organic natures of butterfly? I love butterflies. And should you? Do you need to reconcile it? Is it the juxtapositioning that matters? I'll do this regardless of what time of the year it is, and yesterday it was absolutely hammering it down, so me and the younger of my 2 sons went out for a walk in the pouring rain, because it's a really novel experience. Such a fun, wonderfully bizarre thing to do. I got absolutely drenched. Luckily it wasn't that cold, so we got home without doing ourselves damage, but just walking in the rain and chatting about stuff, and soaking up quite literally the atmosphere. I was absolutely drenched despite having waterproofers on. There's a like a brass, I guess, is that Statue of Liberty facing the wall in this farm. There's like a big what do you call it? Is that a barn? It's made of metal, whatever that is. And next to it there's a Statue of Liberty. Clearly it's green, so it's whatever that is, brass or copper, and facing the wall. It's about 4 or 5 foot tall. It just strikes me as being quite bizarre. Thing just there in a farm. That's what I like to see when I'm out. That gives you ideas about stuff, doesn't it? I consider this a vital part of the artistic process, and I don't mean walking in the country, although I might mean that. I don't mean this is going to be great for like artists who do landscapes or whatever, but again, not a bad place to be for that. I mean the clearing of the mind in whatever way you can, and the injection of new stimulus. And you can get that by going out to your local high street and just free your mind and clear your mind and people watch. If you're a writer, that's got to be, you know, absolutely essential if you're a novelist. And this idea that creativity and inspiration sort of arrives sort of out of the ether, or as a byproduct of latent genius, or as a flash of divine inspiration. I mean, it's just so. I mean, it's just like we're going to hit Occam's razor here. Actually, what happens is if you get out there and you let yourself your brain just wander, you let things come to you. You create new experiences and you see things you've never seen before, even if, you know, something you've walked past before many times, maybe you never noticed it. Maybe that's the thing that's going to trigger the next idea or the next spasm of creativity. You've got my son a year or so ago, I think he was bored and looking for, you know, classic ADHD, looking for something interesting. He wanted to figure out what projects he could work on to practice his programming, and he was like, you know, so how do you get ideas? And I was like, I just kept on saying the same thing. You have to go out there and get experience. You can't just sit there and think your way into inspiration. Maybe if you're a mathematician, like Andrew Wiles basically did that with Fermat's last theorem. Go back to my episode on, I don't know what it was on, long time ago. But for most of us, you need to go out there and soak in the world. The divine inspiration is everywhere around you. There's an idea around every corner, and I think it's just as important for someone like me to go and wander a bit aimlessly around a town or a city, or to go and meet some people. And, you know, I've always found office buildings I find them quite haunting. They're full of people who are probably not really empty, but have to empty themselves out. You know, that's a way of life, a big part of life, a thing that's important. And it makes office buildings quite liminal. For me, they're quite odd, jarring, kind of creepy places, full of people who full of ghosts. They have a corporeal body, but their soul is elsewhere. Their spirit is at home or with their kids. You leave your house in Scotland, you take your chances. So the woods are particularly dark here. It's just quite a dense piece of the woods, but there's light coming in from the edges, but it suddenly gets really dark, and I love that. Especially on a slightly overcast day like today, and always has a slightly creepy feel to it, especially this bit which has got lots of little trees winding into each other, an old really ancient wall, and this gorgeous tree stump. It's a toppled over tree that has clearly been there toppled over for years and years, and the elements have eroded off all the dirt, and it's been smoothed down, and there's moss all over it. Almost like you can stroke it. It feels like stroking an animal. And there's so many patterns in the dried, exposed woods. It's just quite beautiful. So some stepping stones here through a bit of muddy bit with a low, like an old riverbed, but there's a river still running through it, this little stream, and there's this bridge that goes over the top of it. Yeah, hear the sound. Sound of running water. How lovely is that? And it's just carved this really quite sheer bed through the river here. Clearly the trees have bound the soil together around it, and it's quite tightly packed, and it's found a path through, and is flowing happily away. This can get quite deep. At the moment it's just a little stream. There's a huge boulder there. I love these massive boulders. It's like, how did they get there? It's just huge. And I don't know, there's something really incredible about a massive boulder, especially when it's sitting there on its own. They're alive in their own way, they've got their own sentience, and they move around over tens of thousands of years, going from one place to the next. Just checking stuff out and chilling. And if I come back in 50,000 years time, that boulder will have wandered a few metres, maybe further, probably got a bit smaller, maybe gathered a bit more wear and moss and lichen. I mean, patterns are everywhere. What you're looking for is some inspiration for patterns and textures. We've got this bracken here, which is fractal in nature. So it's self-similar, it self-repeats as you zoom in on it, same as ferns, closely related. Some of the trees here are huge, trees are fractal too. I've done fractals quite a lot, so I'm not going to bang on about it. All the little baby trees, I love them, little baby trees! And like, there's quite a few of them. Some of them I don't recognise because they've been growing for a few years, but some of them are just like a foot tall, maybe even just a year or two old. And chestnut looks like it might stand a chance because it's got a lot of light, but most of it's going to die. It's a brutal life for a tree, and a tiny fraction of the seeds will germinate, and a tiny fraction of the seedlings will make it even to something vaguely resembling a tree. It doesn't get trampled or starved of light or nutrients or eaten by deer. Ones that managed to make it to some of these ones, which are many tens of meters high, some of these are really, really big. The chances of getting to that point It's literally one in billions, and it's really quite impressive, especially when humans turned up and started sawing them all down. I mean, this tree is out of control. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trunks. It looks like a beech. It's a beech. Really mega tall, and the bottom of the trunk has got to be 6 foot across, which is bonkers. Oh, it's just so beautiful. Sitting up there making oxygen for us. I get this feeling in sort of my front of my head, behind my forehead, like the sensory organs at the front of my head, my eyes, my nose, my mouth. It's all been sucking things in from the outside world and forcing it into my brain. Really not exactly what happens, not physiologically accurate, but I always feel this pressure behind my eyes. Gets better and worse depending on my overall mental health. There's a certain weight on my chest, and I just feel it releasing, and if I remember, just sort of flex a bit and loosen myself up physically, it's a good thing. And there's no one around, and I find dealing with humans, I love people, but I've got relatively short human batteries. My brain has to work quite hard to keep up with human interactions, and it can get very stressful. It's such a difference between drawing your focus back to its maximum, taking in as much of the view as you can, and your brain can't process all of this detail, and it's in many ways quite uniform. Leaves, grass, crops, skies are fairly uniform white, and the sound is like a uniform white noise, and you could be forgiven if think it was all quite boring, but this is not boring. You can then zoom in and just find things. A big old boulder sticking out of the ground. Wonder where you've come from, boulder. The walls, I love the walls, these old, just piles of bricks that delineate land, and there's not bricks, they're just old boulders and bits chipped off of bits of the mountains from the north of here, and sort of a centimetre plus thick layer of moss on top. It's all quite dry and just feels lovely. Gives the most amazing colours, and these walls have been here for centuries, some of them, and they're habitats for all sorts of animals, little baby animals and insects and stuff. I love them. I just think they're amazing. There's so much here, and there's a uniformity but a chaos to it, and this, I think I probably talk about this quite a lot, this the fine line between uniformity and chaos, randomness and order, and that nature is quite a good illustration of that, because I mean it is quite random, but from random comes order, comes life cycles, comes birth and decay, and it's a fascinating concept for me. Wow, this is getting quite brutal now, and I didn't come out with waterproofs on. The rain's coming at me sideways. Oh, that's beautiful. My God, there's a little baby oak tree. It's got beautiful pink leaves on the top. It's just colours. That's what I mean. I'm always surprised because this environment here is, there's so much beauty and so much variation here, but actually it's all very green right now. So when you just see a little splotch of bright pink in amongst it, it's quite shocking and quite exhilarating. And I'm obsessed by colour. Not in an academic sense, although I spent a little bit of time on that, but I'm not even mixing it, I just like it. I like finding colour and making things be colourful. Or not even colourful, just having a colour and just revelling in that. And you just get reminded of how impactful it is, how shocking colour can be, and your brain seeks out things like that. There's a reason that we get in these TVs that are more and more TVs and screens of all sorts, like phones and tablets and computers, that are getting more and more vivid. What have I taken away from this? Well, in many ways I have nothing. I mean, if I came out to achieve something, I wouldn't be achieving what I want. Oh my god, there's some absolutely beautiful lichen on these boulders. It's sort of sitting nestled amongst these browned old fern pine needles, and it's quite a shocking green, almost fluorescent. It's just there. Should be a bunch of people standing around this pointing at it going, look at that, how cool is that? There's no one here. Maybe the fairies and the sprites are hiding and they'll all crowd back around it when I'm gone. I don't do stuff, but to achieve anything other than maintain my mental health and physical health, and to give my brain some space to expand and relax and find its way back to something resembling a normal state. But you'd be surprised how many times I hit on something really cool, I'm really excited by, that just sort of pops out of a stream of thought, and I can spend the rest of my walk hyper focusing on that. And sometimes I'll get home and I'll just start doing it, just pull out a canvas, grab my computer, whatever type of problem it is I've solved or idea that I've conjured up, and just start working on it. Other times, I'll sit on it a bit and then revisit it and go, no, that was nonsense, I was just having a moment. But I value it all because of the experience, that excitement and that freedom that comes from not being able to act on it, to just let it expand in your brain and explode like a nuclear bomb of ideas, and irradiate that bright light. And I don't know about everyone else, but that's sort of why I do this. I love the process of finding, discovering, creating. It's a process of communing with me, and I sort of see it less and less about the outcome and the output, and more just about an inevitable and somewhat more desirable state of being. Spend as much of my time being a part of it all, and being, I don't know, I feel like
being creative is the most reverent thing you can do. It's the most godly thing we can do. The most honest and authentic thing. And the reason you know that's the case is because deeply dishonest and deeply inauthentic people hate it. They hate creativity, they hate arts, they hate anything that reeks of ideas and non-conformity. But I don't want to think about that. I'm not much of a spiritualist. I'm not religious in any meaningful sense, but I see the act of this process that I'm engaging in right now that will result in me going to my studio perhaps, or whatever I'm going to do, and continuing whatever I'm doing or starting something new. It's all a continuum. Did this walk directly lead to a painting that I'll finish in a week? Probably not, but then, did the paintbrush that was made in China or whatever that I use, did that create the painting? No, it didn't, but it was a part of it. And there's no such thing as a standalone work of art, which is why a lot of the rhetoric around creativity, especially in the context of language models, astounds me at the moment, because it fundamentally misunderstands the role of culture and creativity in culture. But this is all just a thing. It's just a part of my life, my existence, and it's the way that I connect with everything else, and the way that everything else connects with me. Not the only way, but it's my form of prayer, it's my form of church, it's my form of worship, and other people have theirs. Some people worship deities, some people worship money, some people worship human interactions, some people worship attention. We've all got our part to play. I think most of us find our own medium of communing and worship, of really just being part of the human race, part of culture, but part of just everything. And if that sounds esoteric, well, it's not. It's not esoteric at all. It feels the most natural, normal thing in the world. I don't need to conjure up deities to know that there's no meaningful distance between me and these trees. There's no distinction between me and the ground and me and the sky, other than the ones that we create for ourselves. We are just part of a bigger organism, and we're affected by that organism and we affect it, and no part of it is unimportant. And I do my bit. Is that useful or helpful or not? I'm not sure it matters. Which in a strange way is quite a comforting thought. It matters as much as what anyone else is doing, in its own way. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Right, I'm done. Enjoy the things that make you and the people around you happy. Don't feel guilty. See you later.
Nobody gives me sympathy.
Out against mental illness.